All right, let's dive right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're grabbing our markers and stepping up to the whiteboard to map out the exact step-by-step mechanics of psychological manipulation. We hear words like gaslighting and narcissists thrown around a lot these days, but today we're going to draw out the actual blueprints of how these behaviors function, and we're basing it all on hard psychological research. So, here's our lesson plan for today's whiteboard session. First, we'll meet the dark triad, then look at the empathy deficit. After that, we cover Tactic 1, which is gaslighting, and Tactic 2, triangulation. We'll measure the psychological impact, and finally, sketch out the gray rock defense. Let's get to it. Section 1. Meet the dark triad. Because before we can really understand the manipulation itself, we have to profile the antagonists on our board. Let's mentally jot these three distinct profiles down on the left side of our board. First up is Machiavellianism, named after Niccolo Machiavelli, who wrote The Prince way back in 1513. These individuals operate with extreme duplicity and emotional coldness. They'll insidiously push you toward a decision that benefits them, completely regardless of the risk to you. Then we have narcissism. This is defined by grandiosity and a totally exploitative view of relationships, where other people are pretty much just tools to feed their ego. And finally, psychopathy, which brings high impulsivity, reckless conduct, and just a complete absence of remorse. What unites all three of these is a deeply cynical view of human nature. And here's a fun fact for you. Research suggests people with these traits are actually surprisingly overrepresented in corporate leadership roles. They just see interactions as transactions to be won, not connections to be made. Section 2. The empathy deficit. You see, there is a specific engine that unites all three of these personalities and allows them to do what they do without feeling an ounce of guilt. Okay, let's draw a line straight down the middle of empathy on our whiteboard. Over on the left side, we have cognitive empathy. This is the ability to logically understand or identify what someone else is feeling. It's kind of like reading data on a screen. But on the right side, we have affective empathy. This is emotional contagion. It's actually feeling what the other person is feeling and generating an appropriate, compassionate reaction to it. So the really crucial takeaway here is that these personalities have a highly specific deficit. They completely lack the ability to feel affective empathy. They literally do not catch your emotions or feel your pain. But, and honestly, this is the terrifying part, they retain cognitive empathy. They can perfectly read your emotions, figure out your triggers, and pinpoint your vulnerabilities. And because they don't feel that affective empathy, they don't use this information to comfort you. Nope. They use it as a tool, let's draw a big red circle around that, to manipulate you. Section 3. Tactic 1. Gaslighting. Let's move over to their playbook and diagram their first major tactic right in the center of the board. Now, I know this term has become incredibly trendy, and it's sometimes incorrectly used to just describe normal everyday arguments. But at its foundation, true gaslighting is a severe form of psychological manipulation where the abuser completely distorts your perception of reality. It's an intentional deception of someone's memory and mental stability. If we map this process out step by step, we can see exactly how the trap gets set. First, it starts with outright lying and trivializing. They make you feel like your concerns are just dramatic or totally silly. Then, it escalates to reality questioning. Research highlights how a parent might tell a child a traumatic event literally never happened, or a partner will swear up and down that a conversation never took place. Finally, we reach scapegoating. This is when the gaslighter shifts the blame entirely onto you. Imagine a boss holding you accountable for a failed project that they actually mismanaged themselves. The whole goal here is to develop immense self-doubt and confusion in the victim. Section 4. Tactic 2. Triangulation. Let's draw out another highly destructive communication pattern right next to gaslighting. Imagine 3 dots on our board. In a healthy relationship, 2 people have an issue and they draw a direct line of communication between each other to solve it, right? Well, in triangulation, the manipulator completely erases that direct line. Instead, they route everything through a third party. They do this to create confusion, recruit allies, and inject a ton of toxicity into the dynamic without ever having to directly confront the issue themselves. And this brilliant little table illustrates the dynamic perfectly. Let's sketch out the actual triangle, which is often called the drama triangle. Down here at one point, you have the victim. They adopt a poor me stance and deny any responsibility. At the second point is the rescuer. This is a third party who is guilted into enabling the victim, and they usually become completely exhausted in the process. And sitting at the very top is the persecutor, the unseen manipulator who's orchestrating all this drama from the shadows. The manipulator might actually cast themselves as the victim just to recruit a rescuer against you, creating this massive, totally confusing web of loyalties. Section 5, the psychological impact. Let's grab our eraser, wipe away the tactics for a second, and take a hard look at the real damage left on the board. What actually happens to the person on the receiving end of these maneuvers? This quote highlights something really fascinating called the knot theory of mind. When you are subjected to constant manipulation, denial, and reality distortion, your brain literally gets tied up. You form a complex web of harmful beliefs about yourself. These emotional knots aren't just temporary bad moods either. They carry long-term psychological effects that fundamentally alter how you view your own competence and your own reality. When we look at the clinical research, the aftermath is frankly devastating. Constant stonewalling and gaslighting leads directly to symptoms akin to complex PTSD. Victims report severe exhaustion, distress, and a complete loss of self-worth. But perhaps the most defining symptom of this abuse is the surreal, absolutely terrifying feeling that you are literally going crazy. The manipulator has successfully unmoored you from your own trust in yourself. Section 6, the gray rock defense. Look, we are not going to leave you defenseless on the board today. Let's sketch out a highly practical, actionable solution you can actually use. The dark triad personalities thrive on your emotional reactions, whether that's anger, tears, or your desperate attempts to explain yourself. To them, this is their narcissistic supply. The gray rock method is this brilliant strategy where you intentionally make yourself as boring, unreactive, and uninteresting as a literal gray rock sitting in a driveway. You are essentially becoming the human equivalent of watching paint dry. And by doing this, you completely starve the manipulator of the emotional fuel they are so desperately looking for. Let's map out the core tenets of this defense. First, you deliver emotionally neutral, short, and simple responses. Second, and this is absolutely vital, you never, ever share personal vulnerabilities, dreams, or challenges with them. Remember that cognitive empathy we talked about earlier? If you share your vulnerabilities, they will log them and use them as weapons later on, for sure. Third, you limit engagement and keep everything strictly factual. You are basically reclaiming your personal power by dictating the terms of the engagement. So what does this look like in the real world? Well, in a personal setting, if they try to provoke you, you simply say something like, "Thanks for sharing," or "I appreciate your input," and then you just disengage. In a professional setting, if a Machiavellian coworker tries to drag you into their drama, you pivot with, "Let's stick to the agenda." But please note step 3 here. Being a gray rock takes immense energy. It's a temporary shield, not a permanent cure. You absolutely must build outside support systems, like therapy, and genuinely healthy relationships, because starving a manipulator of drama can be incredibly draining on your own soul. As we wipe the whiteboard clean today, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Take a look at your own relationships. Are your boundaries currently acting as a sponge, just absorbing all the drama, the gaslighting, and the triangulation? Or are you ready to harden those boundaries, use these structural tools, and become a gray rock to protect your peace? Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and I really hope this whiteboard session gives you the tools you need to spot the manipulation and take back your reality.